going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
And during this time, I've been asked oftentimes by friends and family, when are you moving? You don't have to live in a city anymore. Come out to the suburbs. And honestly, my wife and I sat there and thought about it. But you know, I am not a quitter. I am a fighter, and I'm going to stay and fight for Cincinnati's future.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Ever since voters sent Pat DeWine to the Hamilton County Commission on Election Day back in November, the question has been who would be appointed to fill the council seat. Normally, Hamilton County Republican Party moves politicians from office to office with the dispatch and efficiency of a chess grandmaster. But this decision dragged on for more than 2 months, culminating in a meeting of party leaders at the Queen City Club on Wednesday afternoon. And the next day, Republicans called a press conference in council chambers where Sam Malone, the only other Republican on council, announced the appointment of Chris Monzel. Monzel was first appointed to council in 2001 to complete the term of Charlie Winburn and was then elected to a full term in November 2001. In 2003, he lost his seat, running 12th. Last March, he ran the countywide in the Republican primary for county commission and lost to David Grossman. I am joined this morning by Chris Monzel, a 36-year-old Winton Place resident and new member of council, and Sam Malone, the other Republican member of council. Welcome back. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Chris, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sam, why did this process take so long? Why did it take over 2 months?
Well, I don't know if the process took too long. I just concentrated on letting the process complete its cycle. I think sometimes when you rush things, you just create an opportunity for error. And I would much rather be patient and allow the process to complete a cycle to make sure that we get the best results.
Let's be clear about this. Legally, you had the right and the responsibility to name Pat DeWine's replacement because each member of council, when they come on, names who will replace them if they have to leave. Is that correct?
The short answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
Statutory, that is the process.
Obviously, the party structure is involved in advising you and helping you make that decision. Helping is a nice term. So this was your responsibility in the long run, and the bottom line, but lots of people were involved in this, right?
There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that a lot of folks don't get a chance to see. But to answer your question, the party had a significant role.
Okay. Chris, as someone who was being talked about for this seat, who wanted this seat, what was your role? What role can you play behind the scenes to make this happen?
You know, actually, Dan, I'd let the process work its way out. Personally, they called me in, talked to me, to see first if I was interested. I said, sure.
How long ago was that?
That was back in November.
Okay.
And then we got called in. I think they went through a field of candidates to see who would be interested. And then after that was a slate was drafted together, and you know, we got called back in for more in-depth interviews with the committee to find out, you know, what each person would do. So, and that's what I basically did, was just follow what the party and what Sam, the process was going to be, and just let it work itself out.
One of the issues in a appointment like this, you don't want to make an appointment because you're immediately having to face re-election in November of this year. You don't want to make an appointment which then doesn't go anywhere. And let's just take a look at the 2003 results from City Council. We've got the City Council race in 2003. As I said earlier, you ran 12th, and Crowley ran 9th, so he got the last seat on council. Lynch ran 10th. We don't know if he'll run again. Leslie Giz, a first-time candidate, ran 11th, and you ran 12th. You had 3 years of incumbency plus a lot of money for that race. What are you going to do different this time?
Well, actually, we didn't raise as much money as we did for our first race when we won in 2001. So right there, that was one difference that can make. Did
you not raise as much money because you thought you had it in the bag, or did you not raise as much money because you couldn't?
I think it was tougher, honestly, with the contribution limits that were put in place that were not in place in 2001 that came in place for 2003. So I think it was more of a technical aspect of campaign finance, which is good.
So this time you will still be under that that cap, right?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, so what will you do different?
Differently, I think the whole campaign is going to be run differently. And from lessons learned of 2003, we had a very broad, vague media campaign. We put all our eggs in one basket, basically, in TV commercials. We didn't use direct mail. We didn't use enough of that grassroots effort that we had done in 2001. And maybe that was because we thought with the incumbency, the power of incumbency, you can win. And that's not true. You definitely need to do all across the board media types and not just put it in one basket. And I think that was a lesson learned that we will do differently this year.
Okay.
And let's not forget, Dan, that Chris Monzel also has Sam Malone, who knows how to create advantages.
Okay. You won. You were a first-time candidate in 2003. You won the first time out.
No, that's not correct. Actually, I ran in '99 and 2001.
He ran 3
My
times.
apologies. So you ran the third time out, which
Correct.
is the normal pattern.
Right.
Yes.
It is hard to establish yourself. So, so now you're going to lead. You're going to lead the Republican ticket. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, what I'm saying is I know how to create opportunities.
Okay.
I think it's going to be 1-2. That's the plan.
You're going to see a lot of teamwork.
Now here's the other side of this, though. Behind the scenes, as this decision was being made, how much of this was on ideological basis? How deeply split is the local Republican Party?
But first of all, let me clear up some inaccuracies here. There's no split at all. And so I would not allow that perception to go on that there's a split in the party. The Republican Party is a united party. We made the decision based on a comprehensive look at what environment we need to create to get forward.
What happened inside that meeting at the Queen City Club on Wednesday night? Because the word is...
Now, first of all, I wasn't at that meeting.
The word is, who was at that meeting?
I
Party
couldn't-
leaders? Whatever that means?
Well, I don't know who exactly was on that committee. I know it was a large committee. There was some
What were you told
discussions.
coming out of that meeting? What were you told about the results of that meeting? Because the next day, Chris is appointed. The word out of that meeting was, and I don't know if it's true or not, that meeting went 27-3 for Leslie Gibbs.
First of all, I don't think there was a vote. And secondly, I think the meeting took place at party headquarters.
No, it took place we showed the video of people walking into the Queen City
No,
Club.
Yeah, I think
that meeting was another meeting.
Right.
I was involved in that
Did
meeting.
that have to do with council?
No, that was regarding another meeting.
That wasn't dealing with this council appointment?
No.
Even though that's the way it was put forward?
I think Dan, there's 2 meetings that took place. There was that interview process that took place that I mentioned
Right.
in December. Out of that, there was being stuff floated that there was a vote taken and that there's this, a certain amount of people lined up. That was not accurate. That there was no official vote taken. There was a second meeting call that just took place this past week with the same individuals in it. And what I had learned was that they took a vote that said the chairman, with Sam Malone, will make the decision.
Okay, so when it comes down to it, you and Mike Barrett made the decision. To what extent was Leslie Gibbs' support of Issue 3, the repeal of Article 12, to what extent was that the deciding factor, or to what extent was that a factor at all?
I think it had very little to do with it. I think what the big issue was, based on the current climate, who can help the ticket the most, and who can I work with based on the current environment to offer the city the most bang for their buck and also help the party.
We just saw the results from the 2003 election. Let me take a look at the results of the Issue 3 election that we just went through in November. Voters voted almost 54% for that. A majority of Cincinnati voters voted for Issue 3. You were opposed to it, Sam. You wanted to keep Article 12 on the books. Leslie Gibbs was for Issue 3, to remove Article 12. You're telling me that that's not a major... She ran ahead of Chris the first time out, and she supported this. These two things aren't factors?
Well, I think the issue is that, once again, I think based on my style, I think you have to compliment. See, when you have...
Okay,
politics is very similar.
How does Chris compliment in a way that either Leslie Gibbs doesn't, or Pete Whitty doesn't, or a number of the other people who were possibilities?
Well, first of all, Chris and I have a little history. Secondly, I believe Chris and I, mannerisms and style has a lot of similarities. So I think we can complement each other in that area, and that's where I would rather focus. If I'm a tall guy, there would be some challenges beneath me, and I think that's how we can complement one another, and how we can also help the rest of the ticket to gain another seat on council, because ultimately that is our objective. And please understand that I would prefer not concentrating on some small differences, because there are none. I work with Democrats on council every day, so to suggest that Leslie Gibbs' position on issue 3 had anything to do with it would be suggesting that I can't work with Alicia Reese, Lakita Cole, Christopher Smitherman, Jim Tarbill, John Cranley, and David Pepper. So that's just it's not accurate. And I would rather concentrate on how Sam Malone have worked with across party lines and across racial lines, rather than trying to create this division.
Chris, on council, and Sam's talking about, I mean, the Republicans are in the minority.
Correct.
Sure.
Having to work across lines, I mean, that's just the reality. Did you learn something from your 3 years on council that will affect the way you operate this time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the first things I want to do out of the box next week is to set up individual appointments with every council member. I mean, I want to build bridges and reach out to understand what they're trying to do for the city. Because I think that's the role of council, is to be down there to put the city forward. And from that, I want to be able to work cross-party lines, cross-racial lines like Sam's doing, because that's what you need to do. As a minority, we're not going to be able to go out and dictate.
Do you think that's different than the way you operated last time?
A bit. Sometimes I think, and when I was in there the last time, I was not as focused on certain areas that I want to be focused on this time. I will continue my focus on crime and continue my focus on financial accountability, taxes, and spending. But like I said yesterday, I have a 5-point plan, and 3 other points are going to be housing, health care, and education. 3 areas that I did not focus on my first time out there, that having taken a year off. And
in terms of education, I mean, Cincinnati Board of Education runs the school system. What can council do? Well,
council does a lot for the schools. I mean, just from the school nurses to the school crossing guards to the money that we're giving to them and helping out.
Do you want to do something different or something more?
I think we want to do something a little different and a little more for them. And I know Sam had spoken a little bit about this with his anti-gang initiative that he wants to start forward, that we're going to need to work with the schools, because that's an issue within the school, is gang activity. And then also there's other areas with regards to higher education that I want to put out there and trying to develop a program that will give inner city children an opportunity to go to college.
Okay. One of the things, I know you live in Winton Place. I know that you are, at least at times in your life, have been a bus rider.
Yeah.
And use the bus to commute to work. That's a big issue right now in front of council, the future of Metro and the city's relationship to SORTA that runs Metro. What's your view on what the city, what council ought to be doing there?
Well, I think we need to take a step back right now. I think it's gotten very heated, and pretty much a lot of things being said that shouldn't be said, and we need to cool off for a time and kind of regather our focus. Not being totally involved with the details and particulars of it, that's what I want to do. I want to try and get in there and figure out with Sam, what are opportunities that we can get some breakthroughs, because it's vital. Transportation is vital for our citizens in the city, and we need to develop a relationship with the county to work this out, as well as the SORTA board, which I think is doable, but I think we've kind of, I don't want to say we're at the edge of a cliff, but we're getting pushed there, and we need to kind of take a step back, regroup, rethink, and come up with some win-win situations.
We have less than a minute left. You mentioned health, too.
Right.
What would be another one of your initiatives in that area?
Well, I'd like to look at our health clinics and try to see, use efficient ways. I mean, coming from GE and the engineer in me, but coming up with some new ways of developing health care that we can expand opportunities for the citizens, and not just keep what we're doing, but maybe also look at other ways of partnering with local agencies to develop a better widespread health care network for all citizens.
Thank you for being here this morning. Good luck in your new reappointment, and we'll be looking to see, because we're going to hear a lot more about this as you move into the campaign.
Right.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Whether it's in the aftermath of hurricanes, earthquakes, or tsunamis, we all look to the Red Cross. After the break, a century of service by the Cincinnati chapter of the American Red Cross. Welcome back. One of modern society's essential organizations is the Red Cross and Red Crescent. The American Red Cross was founded in 1881, and in the midst of the 1884 Ohio River flood, Clara Barton brought a team of volunteers to Cincinnati on the Red Cross's first disaster relief effort. The local chapter was founded in 1905 at the urging of William Howard Taft. This week, the Cincinnati Red Cross launched a year-long celebration of its centennial. Here's a look at that century of service through the eyes of Red Cross employees and volunteers. Whether in the aftermath of a killer tornado that levels entire neighborhoods or a fire that displaces a single family, Cincinnatians count on the Red Cross to be there.
In the Red Cross, we help to relieve the pain and suffering of the moment that people have when their house burns down, or if they're in a tornado or a hurricane or a flood or a chemical spill, whatever it happens to be.
In 2005, the Cincinnati chapter of the American Red Cross marks a century of service. In World War I, hundreds of volunteer women rolled bandages and met the needs of soldiers passing through on troop trains with a meal and some conversation. That tradition carried on in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and now in Iraq. Remembering those kindnesses, some soldiers became volunteers themselves.
I was in the Navy. I had a couple of times I had family members die, and I needed to go to funerals. And they gave me a number for the Red Cross. I called them, and the only thing I know is within a half a day, I had to leave, and they told me what flights were good and arranged everything for me. And I was very impressed with there seemed to be no bureaucracy at all. It just worked very, very fast and seamlessly, and I never forgot it.
Day in and day out, Red Cross volunteers respond to local families hit by fires.
They're just going to escort you to get what you need out of your apartment.
There's one particular one I can remember where there was a large fire, and this little boy lost his parents. And just being able to pick that little kid up, and of course it tore me to shreds because I had a kid almost the same age at that time. And just for us to be able to, to link him up with our mental health people, and then to move from there with the families that were left over, our family that was left over from that, I think that's one of the things I'll never forget, because we were able to do something that nobody knew about. There was no press around, there was nothing around, but we were able to do it, and that's the kind of stuff our volunteers do every day of the week.
As a river city, over and over again, Cincinnatians have found themselves awash in floodwaters. In the darkest days of 1937, Red Cross volunteers risked their lives to deliver food to those stranded in the Mill Creek Valley. When a raging Licking River cut Falmouth, Kentucky off from the world in 1997, Red Cross staff and personnel were there in the emergency shelters.
We were so isolated in Falmouth in the very beginning. It was pretty much a 24-hour shift there until we could get replacements to come in.
Usually people end up in a shelter who don't have a whole lot of family to network with for whatever reason, and so you become an extension of their family in a shelter. And I had a case one time where a mother was pregnant, and she had a very serious medical emergency, and she was there with three little guys that were staying with her, and she actually became unconscious. And so I kind of assumed, her role with the kids until we could get them placed properly. And that's pretty intense. We're in a situation where, you automatically have to become family and friend.
Gary Miller began as a Red Cross volunteer in junior high school. On staff since 1973, he has helped build the local chapter's disaster relief services into the best in the nation.
When I started, we had one disaster truck, and today we have 14.
Gary's first big disaster was the April 1974 tornadoes that cut a deadly and destructive swath through the Midwest.
Besides being scared to death about what we were doing, it was just awesome to be able to go out and see what we were trying to put together. And those days we had organization, but we didn't have structure. And we did not have the training programs that we have today to prepare us for these type of incidents. And we didn't have the relationships with the government that we do today.
Over the years, Miller has coordinated thousands of local volunteers as they responded to hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes. In 1992, in the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew, he sent Elwood and Carol Blank to Homestead, Florida, on their 26th national disaster.
We were on Hugo and we were on Bob, but although there was a lot of damage there, this is unbelievable.
Oh my God!
No disaster looms larger in the memories of today's Red Cross staff and volunteers than September the 11th, 2001.
That had to be one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my entire life, and tried to keep track of, not personally, but as an organization, 37,000 volunteers who were working and having 4,000 people on the street at the same time, and trying to make sure where they were.
When you're on your way there, you have a certain amount of adrenaline. Then when you get there, you're kind of on autopilot and doing your work. It was obvious, just from talking with the people that were there during the incident, that they were very shaken from it, and they were fragile. I worked with the police and the firemen that were there, and they tend to look to the Red Cross and they'll grab them and they want to talk. And so you listen. And every time that you listen, and that, we take a few seconds to listen to what somebody has to say, it seems to make them feel a little bit better.
Disaster services are only one part of the Red Cross mission. From the beginning, Red Cross instructors have taught a variety of courses, from parenting classes to water safety to first aid. Instructors and students never know when that training will be needed and can only hope that what is taught in the classroom will simply kick in during an emergency. That's exactly what happened on Derby Day 2003.
After the race, we were just talking, and my grandmother's head fell back, and she just was really gasping for air, having a lot of trouble breathing. And my mom just looked at her and said to my grandpa, has she ever done that before? Because she had been ill beforehand. But so my grandpa said no, and we just all got a little bit scared. And then the gasping for air became more labored, and she was just having more and more difficulty, and we really started to worry. And then she just stopped breathing altogether. Her head was back, the color was totally draining from her face. She was just completely pale. And I was sort of in the back of the room just observing all this happening in front of me. It was sort of surreal. And my mother is in a panic, and she just calls over to me. She's like, Emily, do CPR. And then I run over. It felt like I was running a mile just to get around the couch to her. And my mom called 911, and I used the training that I had, just sort of a first response. And I checked for her pulse, I checked for her breathing, didn't feel pulse, and she still definitely wasn't breathing, so I just tilted her head back, gave her a rescue breath, and then right before I was going to do chest compression, she started to breathe on her own. She wasn't very coherent, and the words she was saying were all jumbled. We couldn't understand her, but the color came immediately back to her face, and then the EMS arrived shortly after, and they took care of it from there.
In 2005, Red Cross staff and volunteers dream of an even better future, improved technology, more and better equipment. But some things will never change.
The people. The people are still going to be, no matter what we have, we're still going to need people to do and provide the services. So it doesn't make any difference what we have, because radios can break down, communications can, and which it has all the time. We have these wonderful satellite systems, but we're in the middle of a hurricane, they don't work. So it's got to be the people to make things work, and that's what's going to stay the same.
People that come together, in some of the darkest times in our community, I think, and they have a sense of purpose, and they're usually type A personalities that are very energetic, and so you fit in with that group, and you feel a sense of unity with them, and it's a good place to be, with those folks. So I think that's, for me, is a big part of it, is the people that do this work. I just like being around them.
Thank you for making Local 12 Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, Jerry Springer. I know, I said it last week too, but I got messed up on the date. As Gary Burbank says, I am being honest with you this time. Have a good week.